Well, good morning. I'm Kris Doan, and I'm with ESGR in California. And I am so very pleased to actually have my dear friend Andy on today. Now, Andy, you're going to have to tell me how to say your last name.
Wiktorowicz.
Wiktorowicz. I love that. Andy Wiktorowicz.
Or if you're really ambitious, it's Wiktorowicz. But okay, you got to
Oh,
roll R's to do
I don't
that.
know. I don't sound good when I try to roll R's. Well, Andy, thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate it. One of the things that we were talking about in the California ESGR leadership was getting to know people on a even deeper level, something more than just the highs and goodbyes on meetings and whatnot. And so this was a great way to kind of introduce everybody to other folks on the team. So thank you so much.
Oh, my pleasure.
Well, I promise today should be pretty good. Um, Really, what we're trying to do is just get a sense of you and what brought you to the ESGR. So I think my first question would really be, what brought you to the ESGR? And here comes the caveat, and how long have you been a volunteer? And in what ways have you remained active in this organization through that time?
How much time do you have?
We'll keep it short.
First of all, it's a very, very funny and a little bit long story of how I got involved. I got a phone call recommending me to interview for the chairman of an organization called ESGR that I had never heard of. So my first reaction was look up the organization. So I looked up the organization and looked at its mission and vision, and I was very inspired. What ESGR had been doing at that time from I guess it was 72 to this was 2009, 2009, was quite a bit of important work for half of our military forces, almost half, not quite, and for the Guard and the Reserve, which are often forgotten. And I thought, wow, this would be a great opportunity. And I was recommended because I had about 40 years as a volunteer leader in, well, my community, my profession, and also in my industry. So I've done volunteer work in all three and led organizations. So they asked me to interview. So I interviewed, and then I find out there's about four generals, three or four generals that are interviewing for the same position. And so I said, well, I'll give it my best shot. I didn't expect much out of it. Well, surprise of surprises, I got a call from Washington, D.C. afterwards, and that congratulations, I was the new California chair. Well, what do I do with that? I look up California and I find out, well, they've got two separate committees. I don't know how many people know this. We had two separate committees. We had a North and a South because there's different cultural relationships between Northern and Southern Californians. And actually, there's about four Californias, but okay, we won't go into that. And so I said, okay, well, I've had experience working in those organizations. Organization I led in the construction world was in North, South, Nevada, and Arizona. So I've had to deal with all the different types of foibles, if you will.
Wow.
So without stretching this out beyond the lengths of our limit here, so I looked up ESGR, and we had two separate committees. So of course, being an engineer and entrepreneur kind of a guy, I said, well, what's the budget? It's $41,000. Oh, okay. How many people are we serving? 65,000 plus. Okay, so that's $1.50 each every year. I don't think we can take them to Starbucks for that. So I said, we got to do something about this. So I said, great, I'm the chair of this committee, and now what? So I started reorganizing the group. I got the national to fund a national reorganization meeting, and we got everybody involved. And what I discovered is that these are incredible volunteers. We had an incredibly fabulous group of people. I mean, accomplished people in all different ways, in all different directions, all different skill sets, and somehow it wasn't working. Because when I went to the national to get sworn in, they said, well, I hate to tell you this, but your two committees are among the worst.
Mm.
And what we want you to do is put them together. I said, okay, we put it together. We got 65,000 volunteers to support. How are you going to fund me? I said, you can't fund me the way you've been funding us. So the first thing I went to national is I negotiated for better funding, more staff, the ability to travel around the state and do some personal recruiting for both staff. And so that's what we did.
Wow.
After that, we went into the national and we started talking about what the problems were. This was 2009. If you know 2009, my wife was a very high level HR person in Disney and a few other large organizations, a TRW. And she said, you know, we got a problem. The real problem is that these guys are coming back with no jobs. And this was 2009. We had deployments going on all the time, Iraq, Afghanistan. And so, you know, running around and giving employers awards is a wonderful, important thing. But what happens and what good is USERA? You know what that is, right?
Yes.
What good is USERA if the people don't have a job when they come back, or if the job has been, you know, put away? So my initial reaction was, oh, this is a bigger problem than I thought. Just straightening out California is a minor problem. So we felt very strongly, a leadership team, and I got a lot of help from Karen, my wife, to basically lobby the national for some employment support. In other words, when a soldier, sailor, airman, Coast Guardie, Marine, did I miss anybody, comes back from their service or from a deployment and the job's not there, they have to learn how to translate. First of all, they have to learn how to interview. They have to learn how to translate their military operational accreditations to the jargon that they use in the industry. And then they needed to have someone work with them and pursue them, because it's very depressing. You come back, you serve your country, and now you don't have a job. What's that about? Yeah. I mean, so I couldn't live with that. So we started pushing real hard. I cornered the Assistant Secretary of Defense for Reserve Affairs at a cocktail party, and I challenged him. And I said, both Karen and I challenged him. Of course, we bought him a drink first.
I was going to say that's the nicest way to do it. I mean, at least give a guy a drink.
I challenged him with this issue, and of course, it took months and months, but they finally agreed to establish a employment support group, and they had, I think, 56 people assigned that would be going to each state or be hired in each state to be employment coordinators and to follow through with people who were not employed. Okay, so they finally agreed to do that. And so this was about 2010, 2011. And that was one of the most important things we did. Wow. And then, of course, I had to come back to California and figure out what we were going to do in California. And that was, yeah, like I said, from 2009 till now, I've been involved with ESGR at various levels.
That is phenomenal.
And so, you know, I guess that leads into the next issue is what did we do to do things? So the first thing we did was integrated. I saw we had a tremendous group of volunteers. We had a tremendous staff, but somehow the two didn't mesh. There are personalities involved, as there is in any organization. This is not unusual. There's personalities involved. Some of those personalities are extremely strong, as you would expect coming out of the military. And some of those personalities were extremely clever. And so we decided to figure out who we could use where, because everybody has something to contribute.
Absolutely.
And even if it's for a short time or for short reasons, that's always been my philosophy in volunteer work. Not learned the easy way, by the way, that there are some people that, you know, even though they're aggressive or abrasive or whatever their personality is, they have a value. And if they want to volunteer, the mere fact that they're volunteering is something. And maybe they don't have as much time as you'd like them to have to do all the things you want them to do. So then you bring other people in, or you do whatever you have to do. So again, in that leadership role, it's really, really important to appreciate the value that each person brings. Now, that's easier said than done, because what you must do as a leader is to have the people that don't get along appreciate what the other people do, so that there's a sense of, okay, there's this, but there's also this. There's this conflict between personalities, egos, you name it, but there's also an ability to work together and accomplish and raise the whole group up. And that's kind of what we were trying to do. And we did that fairly successfully for the first, even 3 years of my first term. And we got to the point where we were beginning to get noticed, which means when I went back to DC and I got more money for us, and every year we were able to do that. So that's kind of what we had to do. You know, I don't want to take too much time talking about me, but the organization had a tremendous amount of wonderful people that, quite honestly, and I traveled a lot. I've been around the world a lot. I've seen a lot of people. And I got to tell you that the people that I ran into in ESGR California and eventually with the other state chairs around the country, finest people I've ever met.
I agree. It has been
Best heart.
An amazing group of people to work with. And I think that's another positive of being part of the ESGR is there are so many just amazing people involved that it makes you better. It excites you. It makes you feel part of that team.
Exactly. And one of the things that really, really was about these folks is that they all had great ideas, and all it took was a way to implement them. And there was bureaucracy in the way always. That's a given. If you're working with DC, that's the first thing you got to discover. But working with these folks some of them were very well versed with the bureaucracy, and they knew how to get around it. And so you guys take care of that.
Well, as you mentioned,
I gotta say, I had a tremendous chief of staff, or whatever you would call them back then. I guess we used to call them executive directors, and then someone said that's not a good idea. We'll call them a chief of. So I said, call him a chief of staff. But Pat Kirkendall was absolutely fabulous. We had a family tragedy, and took me out for a little while, and he stepped right in and did a tremendous job.
I can see him doing that.
Yeah, he was outstanding. Better than I even hoped when I first hired him.
Well, now he's in Arizona, so he's not too far away. He still
I
steps into our committee whenever we can.
I still get in touch with him every now and then.
Absolutely.
The nice thing about Pat was he was so dedicated. And and I'd be remiss if I didn't call up Phil Sage and all the other people that helped along the way. Joe Biscacci, but sorry guys, if I didn't mention you, I love you all. I mean, really.
Oh,
That was what was so amazing. We had a flood of people come in and say, yeah, we want to be the best. We're tired of this rigmarole. We want to be the best state in the country. And again, eventually we were.
well, we certainly
And
think
the
we're
largest.
trying.
And the largest. And so,
well, I will say you talked about the challenges you had when you came in. That's, 2009. Well, now it's, 12, almost 13 years later. And in some ways, we're kind of still in that same mentality where we've had people who have been called upon numerous times to leave their civilian job, go play military for a while and defend our country, and then come back and have those transitions again. And so it's a whole new generation of people who may not have been really familiar with the military. And I think that's what we hit a lot is there's a separation of employers who are familiar with some of the military concerns and they're pretty good about trying to address them or be pliable. But then we have this whole new contingent that really have no idea. And so one of the biggest challenges I find now as an area chair is, we have limited resources, but we really want to reach out and make a difference. Do you see that that's almost the same kind of problem, or do you see it a little differently now that we're kind of involved in this current environment?
well, I saw things change after I left. And I don't know if you know anything about physics, but there's a second law. There's a second law of thermodynamics. Don't quote me. It may be the third, fifth, or 12th. I don't know, but it's called entropy. And every organization, every organization responds to the same law, and that is systems in physics, if you will, tend to disorganization. They tend to chaos unless force is acted upon. So things tend to want to get messed up. That's a very natural evolution of things. So from 2015 when I left to 2022 now, I saw the evolution of the dissension, if you will, into a little bit more chaos. I won't say call it completely chaos, but into disorganization or lack of energy or whatever you want to call it in a volunteer organization. I saw that happening starting at the national level. And let me tell you, you mentioned why employers were not aware of what's going on. Well, I started the Strategic Opportunities Council, which was made up of 5 or 6 state chairs that were retired that had at least done 2 terms, in other words, 6 years. So between the 5 or 6 of us at six each, we had a lot of experience around the country, and they were from all different areas, from the West, from the South, from the East, from the Southeast, and from the Northeast, and from the Midwest as well. So we had that group, and then we had about 20 employers, serious senior people from Northrop Grumman, which used to be TRW, from Disney, from some of the utilities, from which I can't remember. If I had the list here, I could tell you. I have the list somewhere. And we had this organization, and we went for 2 years, and we would meet and talk about employers and employment. And we had commitments from Hilton, for example, to hire 100,000 troops. Blackstone was the owned Hilton at the time. They've sold them since. So we had these kind of commitments from people to do this. From Disney, we had another commitment for 100,000 troops. Okay, now to integrate them into their organization, Safeway set up a program of 22 weeks of training for people to come out of the military, and they wanted senior enlisted or junior officers. I don't know what they had against senior officers, but I'm not gonna
They've got it.
I'm not gonna go there. And they wanted those young people to become produce managers and to develop them into a management position. 22 weeks is a big investment in people for a business. And these are the kinds of things they set up. And of course, we got a lot of awards for that, and we got people to say, hey, we want to do this. And that lasted until it was shut down by headquarters. So, of course, we had a change in a whole bunch of the people in the senior DOD and so on and so forth. But my point being, you can't blame anybody. An organization will just, unless you put some force into a physical object or a system, and unless you put more energy into it. In other words, if you put energy into a volunteer organization, it's gonna, and I've seen it in almost every organization I've been involved in, that there's just a natural tendency that after you've achieved well, you've succeeded, it's time to relax and just starts going downhill. You could say that about countries too. But anyway,
it's never.
So what has to happen is new leadership has to come in, new forces have to come in. When you follow through the way a business goes, is it has its vision, then it has its producers, then it has its administrators, which are very important, which, nobody wants to do that. Well, there's few that want to do that. Then you have the integrators who keep people happy and going. It's basically an S curve. And then after that, it starts falling down without putting some more force, the new engine, new energy, new vision, new things going in. So there has to always be this rebirth,
right?
For lack of a better phrase.
Reintegration.
Reintegration. Well, that's my philosophy. I don't know if anybody else has appreciated that or seen that, but in each of these phases, there's a dominant personality type that comes out of it. So in the beginning, first phase, you've got the visionary. This person has always got ideas and never stops. And these are wonderful, and people get inspired. In the second phase, you got the producers, people who make things happen, who take those ideas and make them happen. Then you have the administrators who make sure that all the things that need to happen, insurances and payroll and all that kind of stuff. And then at the end, you have integrators, people who make sure there's, parties and birthdays and so on, and everybody gets together and picnics and blah, 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 blah. And every one of those groups persons is very important. But the people that are dominant at the wrong time can destroy an organization.
Ooh. Yes, I think we've all been involved in organizations where you saw things just weren't quite in sync. And it did seem like they were, just struggling to exist. But
yeah, I'm 70, what am I today? 76. I'm still thinking and moving and acting. I don't have quite the physicality I used to have, but I've seen a lot of organizations, and I'm still working part-time, but I'm now involved in election integrity, and I'm seeing this organization start to go forward, and especially in Southern California here.
Right.
Election integrity in California is an oxymoron, but we're going to try.
Well, it's kind of funny, like most organizations, you have dedicated volunteers who believe in the mission, want to work hard, do those things, and keeping them engaged is a difficult task, because at some point you're mitigating, the mission versus their desire. And so there's always a little bit of a shakedown, with how do we harness the talents of people and put them in places where they like to be, where they will succeed, where they enjoy being, so they remain a positive part of the organization. And for someone who's, been kind of at the forefront, saw issues, worked on it, was able to take some time off, to do family things, but came back. What brings you back? What do you like to do within the ESGR organization that just fills that, need for you to be part of the team?
Well, personally, my skill set is turning things around. This is not just volunteer organizations, but I've done this in industry and I've done it with engineering. To be involved in a maintaining kind of a structure, I can do. But where I can really contribute is if something's either starting up or needs to be turned around. And at this advanced age and perhaps wisdom or lack of wisdom, I've learned that you have to know yourself. You have to know your skill set, and you have to know what you're good at and what you're not good at. No one in this world can do only what they're good at. Okay? We all have to do the things that we're not good at. I'm also helping my brother start a company. So I've got a full plate right now. Do I want to get more engaged in ESGR? Yeah, sure. Especially if you say there's some issues that need to start getting resolved. And I would get a hold of Phil and jump right in. But again, I've got quite a bit on my plate right now. And I was trying to do quite a bit with the national one,
which is fantastic.
And I think that's, everything starts at the top, yeah. Right? The volunteer organizations don't thrive if there's no, support at the top. And so that's one of the most important things that we can do in ESGR is to. And I think with a change in some of the politics, we can be probably a little bit more successful.
Which is great, because we need it. We need all the support we can get. Well, as someone who's filled all these many positions throughout the years and, is someone who will, that piece is not working so well, let's work on it. So you're helping decipher where we can improve processes and things as well. What are some of your favorite ESGR moments? Some of the things you've done? Do you have one or two?
Again, how much time do you have?
About 10 minutes, according to the timer.
Okay. All right. By the end of my 2 terms at ESGR was able to identify 100,000 new jobs for returning Guard and Reserve through that employment development program that we put together. And I ended up getting three. Fingers don't work like this.
Yeah, that's okay.
3 of our ESGR coordinators, and not only that, we were able to get $1 million for the California National Guard to set up 16 of their own.
Wow!
And in 1 year, they reduced their unemployment in half.
That's
and
amazing.
The country reduced its Guard and Reserve unemployment by quite a bit, to from 13%, I think, down to 8 or 7 or whatever the national average was. So I'm sure those figures are available somewhere, but we did a tremendous job. That's one. Okay. Number 2, I made a note here. We received our 10th Freedom Award for the state of California. That's out of 20 since the Freedom Award was founded. And at that time, I don't know about now, at that time, the next most Freedom Awards for a state ever were about 8. and we had 20. And 10 of them came during our 6 years. And that's primarily due to Dennis and Cheryl Denoy, who just took that over. And here again is where you put people who are really good at what they do, put them in charge, give them what they need, and get out of the way. Except for now and then you have to check on them, but that's it.
Keep them in the fold.
And the third was the retirement party they gave me. It was really amazing in 2015, and even gave me a Legion of Merit award from the state of California.
Oh, wow.
Which
What an honor.
was kind of.
I think that's pretty special.
That's special.
I
That
mean,
was special. So, like I said, I tried to stay involved at the national level, and that lasted for a few years. And I had like 24 state chairs willing to get involved, former state chairs that were willing to get involved. And we had a tremendous rapport with that group. Those are all wonderful moments. Like I said, three is a small number, but let me summarize. The ESGR experience for me, among all the experiences that I've had, with the exception of the birth of my children, was one of the most exciting and wonderful experiences in the volunteer world that I've ever had. The people were the most giving and caring and willing to do things they didn't like to do, even. They were just wonderful people. And it was and is my fondest memory.
wow. Well, thank you so much for, just letting me visit with you and, ask some of these questions, but certainly on behalf of our whole organization currently, thank you. Thank you for being a part of it and for being the consistent factor. We all learn from what came before us. And sometimes it's, hey, there's reasons why that played out, but it's nice to have, the support of someone who says, here's what I remember. Here's where this, history comes from. Now play with it, fix it, make it even better. So thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your time, Kris.